Well, greetings everyone. Banners on the wall. Anthony Russell back here again, and a new guest, and somebody who doesn't live in the north of England or Scotland for a change to do an interview with me, which is different after the last couple of months where they've been making all the noise. I'm joined by player, coach, and general manager. I have that as of the Swindon Wildcats, Aaron Nell. Have I missed anything off there, Aaron?
There is plenty of other things, but that's good for now.
We are going to get into some of that, it should be said. I think the first question to kind of kick off with is that obviously a lot of people will know you had surgery just after the end of the season. So I think the human thing to do, how you doing? How's the leg holding up?
Really good. It's 8 weeks tomorrow since the surgery. Saw the surgeon last week. He was really happy with how it went. Physios are really happy. Starting to walk now in the gym. Working really hard to get back in time for the season.
Obviously it's changed your sort of summer routine in terms of how you would normally do things. I know, hockey players are superstitious characters at the best of times, but you are, quite a way into your career now. This has probably put a dent in how you would normally approach your summer preparation for what's coming in September.
Yeah, it has been different, but I see it as a bit of a challenge, to be honest. We knew that it was the right thing for me to do, getting this surgery. Been suffering a little bit for 2-3 years, and it was the right time to get it done. And it was literally, I think, the Thursday after the season, after Coventry, I had the surgery, and with a surgeon from Southampton that was recommended, and we were really lucky to get the guy to do it, and it was the right time.
Yeah, and we've obviously seen there's been a lot of sort of NHL players. Nicholas Backstrom, of course, is one who immediately springs to mind, who's had sort of surgery. He obviously had like a hip replaning kind of surgery, and this is about obviously the career one day. The on ice career is going to stop, but this is more than just elongating your on ice career. This is about quality of life down the line, I assume, as well.
Bit of both. This has been done to prolong my career. The surgery, I've done a lot of research on the NHL players and their surgery. Backstrom had some worse than what I had. Brad Marchand had the same done as what I had, but both hips last summer. So yeah, I've seen a lot of the sport we play. We put our hips in a bad position, just constantly kind of being bent over like that. And a lot of players have had it and recovered from it. So I think there's like at least 2 or 3 players a team in the NHL that have had this surgery.
All of your net-minding colleagues, past and present, are probably telling you to stop complaining, but we'll move on from there. Swindon last year were an interesting watch for a bunch of different reasons. I've been very, very public in the fact over the years of doing what I've done here on Banners on the Wall that I've always been a big fan of watching Swindon, mostly because I think there is a consistency to your style that I appreciate. There isn't kind of there's very little of this of sort of a park the bus style that other teams will kind of employ on the road. There is an identity to Swindon Wildcats hockey that I really appreciate. At times, though, it felt last year that gears didn't grind they ground a little bit and they didn't quite go as smoothly as before, although still a decent finish in the playoffs. Obviously, we won't talk too much about what happened between you guys and Sheffield, but how do you reflect on last season? Because I think that certainly reading from your fan base and certainly putting my own thoughts into it, there's a real mixed bag of some people who think it went well, some people who think it didn't go well. Have you kind of landed on how you felt about last year?
I think from a results point of view, it wasn't good enough. From a stuff that people won't see point of view, it was a big stepping stone. I think we needed. It's easy for me to say now, but we kind of needed a season like that where we can kind of regroup a little bit. The 2 years previous, we were really pushing. It was us and Telford at the top, and sadly, both years Telford took over in the second half, and we tried to change a few things at the start. I was hoping it was going to be a kind of 6 month, like just a summer and the start of the season where we were going to struggle a little bit, but maybe it was always going to take a bit longer. And we were very inconsistent. That was our biggest issue. We had, not that you get any trophies for this, but I think we had the best performances against the top teams outside of like the top 2 or 3. Like there wasn't many. Leeds hardly lost a game, and we beat them twice. Not that it's not like, yeah, you're really happy that you beat Leeds twice, but when we played, we were really good. We kind of changed the way we wanted to play a little bit, be a bit more responsible defensively, and when we really concentrated on that and did it, we were a very good team. But the consistency just got us in the end.
It felt at times, and you mentioned obviously you had some really good results. The first team, of course, to beat Leeds, you beat MK quite handily a couple of times. Did you maybe suffer from from something that I think the Bison suffered from a couple of years ago, certainly at the beginning of Ashley Tate's tenure, where you kind of played up or played down to your opponents a little bit, depending on who you were kind of facing?
Definitely, I think at Christmas, I can't remember the amount of games exactly, but I think we had at least a winning record or an even 500 record against the top 3 teams at one point, and we were 2-7 against Basingstoke, Bees, and Bristol. And that's nothing against Basingstoke, Bees, or Bristol, but I know the teams above us are all at their first 9 games, they're all 9-0. So that was a big thing for us. We did get better against lower teams at the end of the season, but it was tough for us. We've been used to being near the top for 4 or 5 years, and when we didn't make the cup in November, that was a big blow for us. And the cup semi-final, then it was good as a coach to be able to plan towards the playoffs and not worry about every single result. Obviously, the playoffs bit didn't work too well, but also plan towards next season. We really, in November, we knew what we wanted to do, and so far we've been able to do it.
I think certainly the thing that struck me was, in the midst of all of this, and I think, we've seen it, and obviously it was a slightly more extreme example because at the time Bracknell were right at the bottom of the table, but you had Jaroszewski and Michael Pink just like absolutely running rough shot. You and Tomasz Malazinski over the last couple of years have become to the point where you're almost becoming borderline unplayable for some teams. Why does it work so well?
Look, Thomas is a great player. Yeah, he's
No, we never guessed that.
I don't get into any debates of who's the best and who. It doesn't bother me. Thomas is the best player for us, and he fits into exactly what we want to do. Thomas went before Thomas went away the first time when the legal messed up. When he came back, he was head and shoulders above anyone. I remember he actually made me better because I had to keep up with him. And since then, we just look. I believe. Well, I'm speaking for Thomas, but we enjoy playing together. Bally has been with us the last 2 years. He really fits well onto our line. And Thomas, he doesn't want to go end to end. He wants to move the puck. He wants to make good plays, and that's what we try and do. We talk a lot and we care. And Thomas was amazing last year. The amount of times we do a lot of video in Swindon, and the amount of time I have to kind of hold back sometimes on the amount of video I show of Thomas, because there's so many good. I don't want to almost put him on a pedestal, but there's so many good clips for players on our team to watch of him. He plays the game properly, and I think he turns 37 in August, and I think he's got a good few years left in him.
Well, if Steve Morris taught us anything, 37 is virtually nothing. That's almost the start of your career after all those years. I think one of the things that struck me a little bit was that the top line of you, like you mentioned, Tomasz Malazinski and Balin Pokodzi, who of course is someone that you've known for a very long time, who's involved in OHA as well. And there was a lot of your scoring that kind of went through there. It felt a little bit at times that you maybe needed a bit more scoring from your depth forward wise. I mean, this isn't to kind of detract, because Chris Jones put up a fair few points as well. But I wonder over the course of the year of maybe that you guys at the top end of your forwards were relied on a little bit too much. I mean, is that something you've thought about? Is that because there's been a little bit of a retooling this summer? There have been changes made, some of them enforced, obviously, but you mentioned about wanting to kind of develop things into next year. You've got a crop of young kids coming through. Is there a thought to maybe how you balance that offense more, so maybe it isn't solely down to that top line to put up so many of your points?
Yeah, that's the plan. That is 100% the plan. We've signed our team. Will be announcements in the next 2 or 3 weeks. That's 100% the plan. Thomas doesn't want to be relied on like he is, and I don't want to be relied on like I am. And look, Russ Jonesy and Colby last year. They had a good season. They had some ups and downs, but so did me and Thomas. But yeah, I think that Leeds had a great season, and Leeds have made our league better. And then you've got to try and catch up with Leeds, and but we also in Swindon we don't have the best 4 players in the league and the best goalie. So you've got to find different ways to try and catch them up, and we're going to try and do that through depth. And yes, signing Glenn's really going to help us. I know there's a lot of jealous coaches of me the day we announced Glenn, and Glenn was someone that we really wanted, and we're delighted that he decided to come to Swindon, and I think he's really going to help our depth next season.
Yes, adding an nearly 80 point forward, sorry, 79 points. Sorry, Glenn, for being particular about that, but adding that sort of level of a guy into your roster at any point for whatever reason is obviously going to be huge. That's just a chance to do some different things. And Glenn obviously comes off of last year having won and done some stuff in a really structured system at Peterborough. Yeah,
and he look, quite often I play against him. I match up against him every game, and Glenn's really improved over the last 3 or 4 years. Last year I thought was by far his best season. He seemed to take it to a next level and really lead that team. I think he was the person last season. I think Peterborough, their D, they have the best D in the league in my view. Their top 4 very good. So you have to kind of talk about Peterborough different than other teams, but Glenn was the forward that really pushed them last year. And in the previous years, I think it was Padlek. But this year, he was the top person that we really talked about before playing them.
Peterborough have always been a team that I feel has needed to be more than the sum of its parts, because they have, especially since the Farrar boys went away, and of course one has now come back, but where some teams like yourselves have kind of had more of an offensive focal point, Peterborough kind of haven't, and the one person who suddenly steps out as being their attacking focal point is now one of you guys for next year. So that will obviously be an interesting matchup next year, because as we know, Slava, for every criticism I have of how much I dislike watching them play, he's a nightmare to coach against. He must be he must tear your hair out at times.
I think they have different ways they play. So when they play a really skilled game, they move their D are really good. I honestly believe their D are the best D in the league. The way they move the puck, they have 5 guys in the play a lot, and last season they probably had the most depth out of any team in the league. They had 3 solid lines and a 4th line that played a lot, and that's kind of the model that we're trying to emulate, I guess.
I'll ask this question because I was knocking this question around with Thomas Graham, who's the co-host of the Wildcast, which is of course the podcast that kind of focuses on Swindon. But we were having this really long discussion, and I'm interested to hear from your side as someone who plays in it and does it. Who are your rivals? Because I really struggle to kind of pin this down, because of course Bristol coming into the league is great for that element of local rivalry, and I'll mention Swindon Town and Oxford United in the same sentence, and I'm sure of course a few people just spit into the corner as a result. But I was really, between the two of us, we really struggled to pin down who your big rivals are on a day to day. I mean, from a playing perspective, who do you think who is there in that sort of respect?
Look, I think Bristol now that they've come in, we struggled against them the first. I think they beat us the first 3 times we played, or 2 times, and they really upped their game against us. And second half of the season, we were better against them. But obviously, Bristol were the local side. Basingstoke, the 2 years after COVID and the couple of years before COVID, the games against them were really good. Great atmospheres. I felt. Like Basingstoke really upped their game against us a little bit, and we really enjoyed playing against them. And then the other team would be Telford, when we were both chasing for the league. Again, the 2 previous years, I thought they were the best games that we played against that team, and it was really enjoyable to be a part of. And so it's not as much local. Bristol now is the local rival. We could tell our fans are really up for them games, both sides, and but you just, I think it's who you're up against in the league, and when the 2 previous years to this year, we've been fortunate to be fighting with Telford. Unfortunately, they beat us in the league, but they were really good games. Now the the other rival, I'm sure you're going to ask about this. Last 2 years has been Leeds. Them games have been really intense, and last year they're probably the best games to be a part of.
Yes, the Nell Classico, as a few people have dubbed it. It's interesting, and I mentioned this to you as we were setting up this email, was because you're now the third sort of person in the position that you're in, where I mean, Matty Davis mentioned it whilst we were talking in the interview. John Strange of Solway mentioned it as well, that both you and your dad behind the scenes have been really, really supportive of the newer sort of ownership groups coming in, which kind of led me to the question, and we'll talk a little bit more about kind of that in a minute, but you do so much for one person, like how? Because playing, coaching, all it entails with coaching, the general manager aspect, which sort of wildly varies kind of club to club, and you're married and you've got kids, and essentially have you found a time machine to put 25 hours into your day?
Look, I think that it's my passion, right? So all the I'm guessing, or I probably speak to the most, like I have the most connections with all the coaches around the league. I speak to a lot of them, and we're all doing it because we love it. It's our job. But you've got to be all in. I believe anyway. For at least this, I speak quite often, every so often with Todd Kalman, and he says you've got to be all in. All winter long, you've got to be all in. The summer's kind of you don't ever rest, but if you want to do it, you've got to be all in, and that's what we are. And look, we want new teams in the league. We need people to play. That sounds really bad, but we want to help people to come in because we know what it's like to lose a league. I don't know I can't remember all the ownerships groups that were involved when the EPL happened, but we know what it's like to lose a league. So we need as many teams to play. We saw this year that the crowds were better when there was 11 teams compared to 9. There was less. It was less repetitive, and we want as many teams to be in the league as possible. We believe in our league. We think it's a good product, and we want to help teams as much as we can.
I think that there is a question I think that started to emerge a little bit about just the player pool in the south. Now, obviously, Basingstoke having to take a step out, which I think you and I would both agree. We've both been in that rink in Basingstoke, and where it probably needs a bit of attention now. But there has been some discussions among some people about just the sheer number of players in the south of the requisite standard. Now, Swindon obviously has the benefit of having the OHA on its doorstep, so you do kind of have a bit of a focused pool of very, very talented youngsters that you can kind of call on if needs be. But we've added a couple of teams in the north now. Are there worries about the player pool, or is it a case of the fact that coaches are going to need to take chances on these younger players, like bringing in a limit on the number of over 25-year-old players in the division?
Last summer was a lot more difficult than this summer down south, anyway, because we had Bristol come in. We had every player, and Bristol, because they're a brand new team, they had to speak to as many players as possible. And so every player I spoke to last summer was also speaking to Bristol. And
Jamie Olsen seems to have a thing about signing every British player under the age of 23 as soon as they become available on the market.
So we found last summer a lot more difficult than this summer. I think, but what also Jamie has done is because they're a new team, they have to give some players a chance. So Jay Warren and Mason Lipsey, they're local players to us. They're from Swindon, and they've been just thrown in the deep end, and it's done really. And now they're NHL national players. So I don't worry about it too much. Everyone wants to have a moan. Quite often, I've been looking at some rosters this week, and quite a few of the teams are going to have 11, 12 forwards, 6, 7 D, and in my view, that's plenty. We all want depth and that stuff, but it's we've just got to make do of it. I think it's more important to have more teams than having an easier player pool.
The thing that strikes me as well about Swindon as an organisation is that and this isn't I'm speaking to you, but this isn't an attempt to try and sort of blow smoke or anything like that. But the club's quite well established. It's very, from the outside, it's very well run. You guys are really well set up as an organization. And of course, right at the very beginning, there were elements of the Wildcats back office helping the Knights back office to get them up and running and into a kind of a position. How easy is it to sell that level of stability to new guys you're wanting to come in? Because hockey as a sport, the world over, has a reputation where teams, owners, he says, knowing full well from Basingstoke about being a bit fly by night. But you guys the Wildcats have been around in this format for a while under really solid leadership. There's nothing necessarily particularly new about the excitement of the adventure because it's such an established hockey market. But how easy is it to sell just the fact that you are a really well-run club to people?
Look, we try and sell it. That we try the best we can. This summer we've been able to make a few new signings, and it was a bit easier to sell it. Last summer it was harder. But look, we take pride in it. We take pride in looking after our players. Through COVID, I feel we were really good to our players, but they deserve it. We're going to do everything we can to help them, and I think I've been doing it seven, maybe 8 years now, and we try and be very calm. I like that we've only done this once, but you never want to do it. Like we've only released one player during the season when it's been our choice. So we're really proud of that. We don't want to, when someone's here, they're here. It's not. I remember one of my first years coaching, I said to my dad, I felt we had to change an import, and he said, "No, you're not taking the easy way out. You sign the imports. It's your job to make sure that it was your job to make sure you sign the right ones." So we don't like the firing people and getting rid of and chopping around players and that type of thing. And like all of this whole 2 weeks notice thing, we have no players on 2 weeks notice. They're all on imports the first year, 30 or 60 days notice. All our Brits, I believe, are on 180 days notice. Like, you're not leaving. Like, it's just a no. Once we've committed to you, we want you to be with us, and it's my job to recruit the right team in the summer. And then if we're not good enough in the season, it's to make them better.
You talked about being all in, about this being your passion. So just to turn that slightly, how easy do you find this? Because playing, with all due respect, you are one of the best British players of this generation at this level. I don't think that the numbers belie that fact that you're quite good at this hockey lark. But the other stuff that comes with it, how easy is it to do?
It's not easy. I enjoy it, so it doesn't feel like work. It's a lot easier when we win at the weekend. But look, it's every coach goes through the ups and downs. I have a couple of coaches in the league that I speak to almost once a week, and one team's had a good weekend and we're all happy and everything's great, and the other team's had a bad weekend and you're moaning, and it's just, it doesn't feel like work. So I've been very lucky so far that I've never had to have a real job, and that's something that I really enjoy and I'm proud of myself for doing that. And we just get on with it. There's lots of ups and downs. There's do a lot of stuff for the finance of the team, do all the league fixtures. That feels like work when I do the league fixtures. That starts next week, but it's all for what I love, and really enjoy it.
I have to ask this question because it's been burning a hole in the back of my mind since we talked about this. Because one of the things that you are is very, very visible, and not just in the sense of your after-match interviews that you do with Ben Callahan, but the acting in some of your sponsor adverts. I have to ask, is it a you thing getting you involved? Is it your office team saying, no, we need you front and center, Aaron, because you're like the star player? But basically between you and Sam Bullas, you've almost got yourself a show reel. Like, I assume that's just a nice diversion, but you do seem to get a bit of a kick out of doing some of these, and some of them are very funny.
Look, might sound bad, but we're just trying to. We're fighting every day to survive. So some and every club is like some of the I don't really follow much on social media. And this new algorithm with Twitter, I get to see a lot of stuff, different stuff now. But we're all trying to survive. So if we've got to do something that's a bit silly and we think it might work, we just got to do it and try and do it with a smile. I tell the people in the office, as long as I don't visibly see it, I'm happy. So I just don't look for some of the stuff that's gone out. And it's just what it is. The stuff after the games, like the interviews, it's what I don't love doing it. We're not running out to the back to say,
Yeah.
You're talking to your fans. The fans pay their hard-earned money to watch us play, and especially after a loss, they want to hear why we lost, and you've just got to tell them. I don't think you can hide from that.
Yeah, it must be frustrating, and I suppose we've all seen like through the Premier League and microphones kind of sort of being thrust into sort of people's faces after moments of sort of high joy, but also quite sort of quite frustration, bad losses, tough losses, and things like that. I suppose it's just a necessary evil at that point for sort of the way that sports is kind of put forward to people. I mean, it must be very, because not only are you having to think of something and process everything, you're also knackered because you've just played, you've just iced for sort of 20, 25 minutes a night. It can't be. How do you find the words in those moments? Because I'm someone who spends my entire time writing. Like, writing is my hobby, and it's also and it's what I do. But even there are moments where I will get to a point where I just there are no more words left in my brain after the last period of time. So how do you manage it, having massive physical and mental exertion for 2.5 hours?
You just got to do it. Sometimes you go back to some just bog standard answers. You don't want to kind of cause too much of a stir. I know there's been a couple where I've caused a bit of a stir.
Yes.
It's just what it is. I think you've quite often you just got to speak your mind. And look, we're all passionate. We want to win. We always talk about in our league that Monday to Friday we're helping each other. Saturday and Sunday we're trying to beat each other. And look, the interviews after the game, I don't want to make it sound too bad, but we're trying to sell tickets because we are surviving, and we have the biggest office staff, especially between the two teams of anyone in the league. And on a Thursday morning at 10 o'clock we have our media meeting, and we see how many views a certain interview had or a picture had, or what's the best time to send out social media adverts and promotions and that type of thing. So it is part of just selling the sport and selling the team and trying to sell tickets for the next Saturday night.
You mentioned about the fact about Monday to Friday trying to help each other. Of course, there was the press release about the fact there is meant to be kind of sort of greater cooperation over a variety of things. It was more of sort of a couple of sentences. Is there anything more concrete actually kind of come out of that at the moment? I certainly think that a lot of people are obviously quite interested as to what that's going to look like in terms of how some of these greater areas of cooperation will happen, especially as well now with Solway coming into the league and being the better part of 3 hours north of the nearest team to them.
There's a lot going on. I from a collaboration point of view, our league's in a really, really good place. We in British hockey can never be too secure, right? There's always a lot of movement. I think we don't really talk about it in our league meetings, but I think as a league we should be proud that we survived the last 2 or 3 years. We're all week to week, month to month. There's no team making loads of money out of this, and so it's been a real. You could probably find it somewhere. We lost £49,000 in the year of COVID, so that was a killer. And it's just about surviving, and we all know that we need each other. The first time I kind of went into the league meetings was the last 2 years of the EPL, and the meetings then were a lot different than they are now, with all the drama that was going on back then with the different teams at the top, and the meetings were vicious and they were horrible. And now they're really good and positive, and we want to help each other to survive.
The thing that you mentioned about obviously the fact that a few years ago it was a little bit dicey in some of those meetings, but obviously now you have a much bigger kind of part than you obviously did, and obviously it's no secret your dad's a pretty big deal at this level. But how does that conversation go when he rings you up and goes, son, by the way, I've bought another team?
So I remember it was April 2021. We went up to Leeds to see the rink and to see the people at Planet Ice, and we just drove. It was kind of on a whim, not on a whim. We was kind of organised a week ahead, and right, let's go up to Leeds and saw the rink. I think the rink's amazing up there for this level. It's unfortunate it's not a little bit bigger, to be honest. And we looked at each other, and on the way back, our minds were racing, and we just went for it. And it's look, my dad's very straight. And I think that's why the whole thing can work. That he is relied on a lot around the league. He's on the phone constantly, other owners, EIHA, all that sort of stuff. So, but he's very straight, and he just wants to know the truth. So that's why it can work having the two teams. I get told, "Oh, who does he want to win in a game?" He doesn't. It doesn't matter to him. It doesn't matter as long as both teams put on a good show for the fans. Whoever the best team is will win, when we play each other, and that's what it's about. And we feel it's good for Leeds. Us being my dad's a good owner for Leeds, and he's really moved the club on a long way in 2 years.
Is it strange now, having been around him for so much, to have to coach against Ryan Aldridge?
Yeah, it is. It's funny sometimes when I see him sometimes he's angry, and then sometimes you see that I'm angry. And look, Ryan's known me for as long as I've been alive. He's like a big brother to me. Really, really proud of him, how he did this year. He obviously had time out of OHA, had a lot of belief in what he was going to do in Leeds, and I don't think they really expected to be probably as good as they were, but Leeds changed the league last year, and Ryan coaching there really changed how we have to think about coaching in this league.
What I find really interesting is that I think there's a real argument before he became the Leeds coach that arguably Ryan's strength was about his coaching of younger players, and he subsequently goes and wins the league in his technically his second attempt with the youngest average age squad in the division, which I think spoke a lot to his kind of his skill set, to be honest.
Yeah, well, he was with OHA for I think 7 years, and Ryan was a better coach for it. He was given time. Well, he had to push himself to. They're on the ice 5 mornings a week, so it's not just. When sort of coaching the league always tells me like our teams, because we're not at the highest level in world hockey, we know that. We're
not? Oh no! Someone tell the elite league.
It's like fixing a broken bus. There's always something you've got to fix every week, and then when the steering breaks, and the clutch goes, and that. So you're just trying to keep it all together. But when you're with the OHA, you've got 5 practices a week. You've got a plan. You can do more skill development. And that's what he took into his team at Leeds. He's obviously got some very good players that bought into. They fit his style as well. Them players, and they fit really well.
How big a thing is OHA within the context of British hockey? Do you think?
Well,
because it's been around now for a while, and lots of people, and Ryan is one of them. Ryan obviously has his things that he's doing on his own now, but we've seen today about Milton Keynes having their sort of development pathway bits and pieces, and lots of teams have obviously done a lot of talk about doing these things, and they kind of sort of appear and then fizzle out, and then reappear and then fizzle out. But OHA's actually now been around for quite some time, and it feels like the players from those sort of original classes have started to kind of dissipate out, and sort of looking around in places. How big a thing has having OHA been for British hockey on the whole, do you think?
I think it was really big. Sadly now we've had to kind of, because of COVID and Brexit, the B word, we've had to kind of tail it back a little bit, but we're still, so in Swindon, our 15, 16 and 17-year-olds, they're on the ice too. We've kind of really tailed down the OHA program, but they're still getting the ice in the morning. So Jamie Smith and Dylan Lipsey and Alfie Druitt this year, they were on the ice 4 nights a week and 2 mornings. And I believe they were probably the 3 most improved players in the country from where they started at the start of the year to where they are now. So we've had to tailor it a little bit, sadly, because of Brexit and COVID, and Ryan took a job outside of hockey. It kind of stopped the full-on program that we had, but I thought it was really good for British hockey. It was, when something comes in like that, there's always a lot of detractors, but it was to help development of players, and that's what I think it did. And there were some great times. I remember I see Pete Russell every so often. He lives in Swindon, and we always laugh about the 10 years ago when the first practice, I think there was 9 players on the ice. One of them literally could hardly skate. We had 2 German players come, and they weren't the best, but we survived it, and it was a great time.
Looking ahead a little bit, then obviously that leg's going to heal up. You're going to be able to kind of rock and roll, and how you're going to, like you say, the team is signed. It's all just a matter of drip feeding it out. Albeit it felt like again you were going to announce half the team in March, like you did before. We forgave you for the first year because we knew why you did it the first time around. But how optimistic are you about this coming season? Because I think the one thing from my personal perspective, I've had to balance the fact that my team has skipped off for the time being, the team that I watch as a fan. But from an overall kind of league perspective, I'm feeling relatively positive about what we're going to see this year. How are Swindon looking? Genuinely, how do you reckon you'll do?
Look, we're happy. We're happy to bring Glenn.
I signed a team of utter buckets, and they can't do anything. No, wasn't expecting that response, to be honest.
No, we're happy with the players we've brought in. Glenn was the first person that we wanted to sign this summer, and fortunately, it came off. His situation let that happen, and we've had an older team. We've tried to get a bit younger. We've had the same players for a long time. We know that's going to start coming to the end. We all can't play forever. And we're really happy with where it's going. Where we'll finish, it'll depend on how we it's a really rubbish answer, but it's how we do. Every team,
it's absolutely fine. Anytime anybody asks me, who's going to win the league? And I'll say, it's June.
every team in August likes their team. I've learned that. I remember when in the EPL, I thought I had this really good team, and in the EPL we actually did well to get where we got to a few times. But you think you've got this really good team, and it doesn't quite work. And so, look, we're really happy where we are. It's all going to depend on how the players mesh together. Last 2 imports to announce, that type of thing. And but no, we feel like we've had a good summer so far, and we'll see where we go. It's about, I think you can never you always want to win the league, but I don't think you can ever say we're going to win the league. Maybe Leeds are now, because they won it so well last year, the only team that could do that. And we're trying to catch up. I think there's more depth in the league this year. I think Leeds lost 5 games in regulation last year. I think I think they'll lose more this year. That's just, if they win 5 again, lose 5 again next year, then good for them. They can win it again. It's going to be a lot more competitive from top to bottom, I think.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned about the fact you try to get a bit younger. The Wildcats were the oldest team by average in the league last year. Has getting younger been harder?
Not really, to be honest. We were always going to do it. We were always going to do it. I've heard a lot about these rules of the over 25s. Look, what happened with our changes? We always knew that change was going to happen. We knew Floydie was retiring, and we knew a few people were going to move on. So look, like I've said it 3 times, we got very lucky with Glenn coming in, and that kind of fell in our lap a little bit. And Reese was a player that we like his potential. I don't feel he's been told this by me. I don't think he had the best end to the year last year. But he's got bucket loads of potential that we're really excited about. And Josh Shaw is someone that I've known since he might be the first player that makes me feel a little bit old. I've known him since he was 4 or 5, and I believe he shouldn't have left I think he should have been with us last year, but that doesn't matter. He's come home, and we think it's a really good situation for him. So we've enjoyed getting the players in that we have.
Gap years work for people occasionally. Sometimes they come back better for it. And yes, I know what you mean about feeling old when I watched a 16-year-old Ollie Hemmings-Mayer play last year. It's like, oh, my knees hurt looking at you. The three import changes obviously caused a little bit of discussion. I mean, obviously, from what you said there, your intention is to run the full complement this year. How's the import market been? I mean, Matty Davis, when I spoke to him, was obviously, had some plans in place. I know he's got things locked in now, and Solway are running along, just making things up as they go along by the looks of it. But how easy has it been to kind of secure, get guys back? Obviously, Thomas was always going to come back, and Colby Tower was obviously he took a little bit of time to warm up to the division. I think he really, started to make some real impact for you guys towards the end of the year. But even if you bring those two guys back, there's still another hole to fill. What's it been like looking for people outside of the country?
It's been a lot different than last year. There's been a lot more. I think our league's starting to gain a bit more respect again. Before COVID, it was very tough to get players here. Very, very tough. The magic Brexit word has made it a bit easier to get people in, to be honest. And so this year we've had it's June. By May, I would have had as many good players come through that were available as all of last summer. So we're starting to get a bit more respect. I think all the young players, the young Canadians that came in last year were really good for our league. I think the year after COVID, I think like Kieran, Cole, Sean Norris and Talbot made our league better and faster. And this year, I think it was the young imports that made our league better. And you could really see that it improved year on year. Next year with the third one, I don't know everyone's team, but I'm pretty sure people are kind of doubling down on these young players, the young Canadians coming over to make our league better. So it's going to get better again. And it's always difficult with the import. At the start, everyone wants to play at the highest level possible. I know we're not at the top of the pile, and so you want young guys in that want to prove a point.
I mean, it'd be loath for us to, having talked about the import situation there, to not mention kind of the import situation above, because obviously Swindon has a history of developing some relatively decent young players who've gone away, been able to do some good stuff. I mean, Ollie Betteridge is probably an immediate name that leaps to mind in these kind of things. But the increase, the import level in the elite league is always going to cause a massive amount of discussion, because that discussion about the ability for British players to come through and play at that highest level, there's a lot of schools of thought, and I appreciate you're going to have to give quite a diplomatic answer here. But where do you fall on such matters at the moment?
I don't know. It's tough. Like we're all like, I see some stuff on social media about development and stuff. Like every league in the world is a development league. Every league in the world, you want to develop players, but you're doing it because you're a business. You're not a development league. Like our league is not a development league. We want to develop players, and if Reece Kelly plays for us next year, does really well, and then goes to the elite league, great. That's great. That's what we've talked about him hopefully doing, and then that helps me in the long run. Like I still try and sell that we had Sam Jones for a year in Swindon, so. We want to develop players. There's a big gap. What happened was the gap was maybe I might have been closing when it was the EPL, or getting relatively close. And what happened is our league took a nosedive in the quality of it, and their league kept on getting better. And it's I don't like when people compare the two. Like we're doing the best we can, they're doing the best they can. Our league has improved a lot over the last 3 years since we started the National League, and it's going to continue to get better. Brits in that league, it's very frustrating. They need to play, but also the teams need to win. So it's sometimes it's tough on the coaches when they want the best players on the ice, because they have to win to save their job. That's the difficult thing for the coaches. It's for the owners and the league and the associations to really sort out the import situation. And I think there could be a few less imports for sure. Like when I was in Coventry, I think there was 10 or 11 maybe.
Yeah.
And me and Robert Farmer were the 9th and 10th forwards, and I remember Farmer was better than me at the start, and he was playing more, and then it kind of switched. I think Farms missed a bus at the Continental Cup. He missed a bus, so I started. So I started playing more than him, and then after the Continental Cup, Owen Fussy got hurt for the season, and Coventry weren't in the position to replace him, so we just got chucked into the deep end, and we just played, and we both did really well that season. So it's hard for the bits. You need a chance, but you also need to be good enough, and a coach is going to play the players that he thinks can win, because that's his job's on the line.
I think certainly you mentioned an interesting point there, that the National Division is not a development league, which I think is the first time I've heard anybody say that. Because I think very much the impression is because the EPL, of course, was hung with that label of being a development league.
When I say it's not a development league, it's a development, and it's just a league. Yeah. We've got 3 young players that were really excited. Well, 4 now, like outskater players with Josh that are with us now, and we're really excited about them. We want them to develop. Josh has come, and he's going to be in the ice 4 times a week with us. We want him to develop, and if that means he develops to be a Wildcat for his whole career, great. If that means he develops to become an elite league player, GB player, that's great too. There's no real right or wrong answer to any of it. But at the end of the day, as people, you want to win. Our fans want us to win. And so you've got to try and develop and win at the same time. And that's every league in the world. The NHL's the same. Unless we could be a development team if, I don't know, the Cardiff Devils paid for us to play. But no one does, because we have to pay for ourselves. So you're trying to win, you're trying to compete. People are in different cycles of where their expectations are. But we're a development and a competitive league. It's both.
The thing I've said to people, and I think sometimes maybe I need to shout this a bit louder, is the National Division is probably what it should be, which is it is ice hockey's equivalent of the Championship. It's not made to be. It doesn't have that label of being a development league hung on it like the EPL did, but it's meant to be the pathway. It has a level, and those who are very, very good should get opportunities above. And if you do not get past that point, it's not a bad thing. Some players are very, very good in the Championship and not great in the Premier League, and I do wonder why. And because the one thing that irks me is that that certainly comes out from certain sections of the Elite League is that the Elite League is not a development league. So after I've smashed my head through the wall for the umpteenth time, they always talk about, it's purely sort of about business. And I sometimes wonder whether people with that opinion, and it appears that some people who are in positions of power within that league as well, feel that way as well. And I find that very, very hard to kind of reconcile myself with.
Unless when you're in whatever league you're in, league below, you always kind of look down on a little bit, and it's wrong. And I try not to. I'm not saying I'm perfect, but you do. So like the Elite League will look down on our league. There's a league in Europe that will look down on the Elite League. So it's like we're all
Finland. Finland. Hello, Liam Kirk.
we're all in our little spot, and we're trying to do the best we can. And I think the Elite League, them teams, when they've got the players, they try and develop them. Cardiff and Sheffield, they are trying to develop these players, but they're trying to develop them. So, if they end up moving on, great, good for them. But they want them to be better for themselves. Some of the things you hear about things in the Elite League about some of the players getting really low money to be full-time players. I don't think that's right. But some of the players in the Elite League are really well paid, and it's their profession. So. It's a tough situation. We're all trying to do the best we can. I don't agree with 15 imports, but I do kind of see what their business is, and they see it their own way. So we can disagree on things. I think the world nowadays
is not disaster.
No, it's not. The world nowadays, you have to have one line, and that's it. And if I love this, the other thing is the worst thing in the world. It's not. We're all trying to work together. I think we should be anyway. We should be trying to work together.
We're edging towards the end of our time, so I'll ask some questions that I've sort of had rattling around, because to say that your dad has been a very large influence on you and what you do would be an understatement so big it would sink a boat. But I won't ask you for the greatest lesson because that'll be really hard. But give me what is one of the most important things your dad's taught you about stuff that you do within hockey?
Just being straight, communicating, not worrying about what everyone thinks. You don't have to please everyone. I see some of obviously social media grown in the last 15 years. I remember 15 years ago there used to be the forums or whatever. You know what, Ben Callahan told me there still is it the hockey forum?
The HF is still there, still going.
So that's great for the hockey forum, but you can't read everything. You can't read everything that the fans are saying, sadly. We always look, we've got a big office. We have 7-8 people that work in our office for the two teams, and something bad happens and the fans are going crazy. They're not happy. And my dad always says, how many comments are there? And it's, there's 50 comments. Okay. How many people have said anything? And it's 10. It's like, well, that's 1% of our fan base. It's probably 0.3% of our fan base. So you can't always just try and please the people that are loudest. You've just got to believe in what you're doing. Not read too much of. Well, I read very little of any social media. I remember when I was younger, I did, and it affected me a little bit. And I was like, well, I just won't do it again because you can't please everyone, and you've just got to be honest with people and straight, and do the best for other people.
When you are now closer to the end of your career than you are the beginning, I think we'd probably say, when you're in a position where when you transition away from playing, you are relatively set up in terms of what you're going to do. There is no big mystery of what Aaron Nell will be doing when his playing career comes to an end.
What will I be doing?
No, well, eventually you'll probably still be where you are. To be perfectly honest, I don't think the Wildcats are going to disappear anytime soon. What do you think your legacy as a player is at this point of your career?
Probably could have done better in the Elite League, to be honest. I don't really know what people think of me as a player. I score a lot of goals. Maybe could have been better, but look, I'm happy. I don't have any regrets about would I have liked to play more GB games? Yes. I had one tournament. It was a really bad tournament for the team. We got relegated in Hungary. Where they are now compared to where they were, that was 10 years ago. Where they are now compared to where they are 10 years ago is amazing what they've done. But look, I don't really think about it too much. I just try and help the club as much as I can, help the players, and enjoy it. That's big thing. Me and Thomas, I'm a bit younger than Thomas, but I think Thomas will be able to play to an older age than I will, and we enjoy it now more than we ever have. We're on the ice more than any of the players, right to the end of practice, staying on after and that, and you just got to enjoy it. I don't really worry about what people think. I know that might sound bad, but that's how I am.
You are obviously synonymous with your club for a bunch of different reasons. But obviously, you're not going to say yourself because, as has probably been proven by the last little while we've been talking, you're not one for really having much in the way of an ego. Who is Mr. Swindon Wildcats to you?
Look, Bully's been here a long time. Bully, Stevie Whitfield. From an import point, look, the most important imports we've had since I've been here about 15 years now have been Thomas, Hugie, and Jan Kostel. And they're the people that you think about. But Bully and Wits, I've known Wits since we were both, I think, 7 or 8 years old. And this year, sadly, is going to be his last year. And yeah, he's been playing, and he's only ever played in Swindon. So yeah, them two people as I really think about.
Yeah. Who's the future?
Oh well, look, Jamie Smith really excited us this year. It's funny when we got put in our situation by not being very good at the start of the year. That meant you can give more of a chance to some young players. And look, Jamie Smith has got a big future with us. Dylan, Lipsy, Alfie Druitt. There's a goalie, Ben Clark-Leach, that is, by all accounts, one of the best young goalies coming through. And then look, we've still got Josh is only, no one can, like, Josh plays a lot older than he is. Josh Shaw's only 17 years old. So look, we're excited about what's happening here. We've got a good crop of players coming through that are on the ice all the time and pushing to try and be the best they can.
I'll ask the question because I can hear Ben Callahan and I can hear Thomas Graham in the back of my head poking me if I did not ask this, because Eddie Bebris on D, interesting experiment.
Yeah. What do you think of it?
I think you've taken one of the league's best power forwards and put him on defense, and I don't quite get why.
I tell Eddie this a lot. I think I took a player that scored 9 goals as a forward and he scored 7 goals as a D. Look, Eddie's a D man in my view. Okay, there's a flexibility.
There's a conversation we could have about Matt Selby about whether he's a forward or a D if we want to take names back into the past as well.
Look, in our league, sadly, I don't know if this is good or bad. The forwards are better than the D in general.
Agree. Okay? Yeah, I don't think we can disagree
and
with
it
that.
Used to be, and the goalies have actually really improved over the last 2 or 3 years, in my view. So the forwards are better than the D, and Eddie's gone back in D, and there was, especially at the start, there were some really tough nights. Eddie was a dominant D man, in my view. He was a dominant D man. Everyone thinks Eddie's not the most consistent forward in the world. And he's a lot more consistent in D. He makes errors. Every D man in the league makes errors. I was watching some of the goals from the Coventry weekend the other day. One of the best D man in the league made an error with under 2 minutes to go in the Sheffield Romford game, and Romford scored. So there's no D like Eddie with the size of him, the way he skates. A lot of we found out, and it's a big reason why we signed Reese, is when Eddie was on the ice, we were better. Eddie had we get a lot of like the analytical stats or whatever now with the Instat. Eddie was at the top of a lot of them things that don't mean everything. It's not all about stats. It's not all about goals and assists. But yeah, when Eddie was on the ice, we were a lot better team, and Eddie played against the best players all the time. Eddie had a tough playoffs. We all had a tough playoffs.
Yeah, that you did.
Eddie was to do what he did in his first year. I thought was amazing, to be honest. And I'm way more comfortable with him being D, and he's going to be a D-man.
I got the rationale. I totally got the rationale as well, especially as well when you had somebody like Russ Cowley in the lineup as well, who was able to kind of. And Russ is such a multi-tool guy, even at his age, where he's the brain and the hands are still very much there, even though the legs are not a little bit, are not quite as fast as they once were. But it certainly struck me from the outside as odd, because why you wouldn't put Russ on D, who's played D at quite a high level, and leave Eddie to kind of sort of smash and crash and bash around a little bit more. But I suppose you took one of your better skaters and put him in a position where you need to have really good skating.
Yeah, I think Eddie's upside in D is way higher than forward. Eddie's a good forward. He's good. He's good. But in our league, I think he's a really good D. And have someone that can skate like that and is as big as that, as strong as he is in the corners, I think he's very tough. He would be very tough to play against. And yeah, I think he's a D man. I see a few of the things that he's not a D man. I disagree.
Well, you're the man who gets to make the decision at the end of the day, so it doesn't matter what the rest of us say.
Look, I would tell Eddie this, but like someone, Nicky Watt said to me, he's a top 5 forward in the league. Eddie wasn't a top 5 forward in the league. Eddie was a really good forward in the league. Like a really good player. We signed him 2 years ago as a forward, and I would sign him now as a forward. If we had loads of D come up, I would put him forward, no problem. But the year before he scored 9 goals, and we need to try and get more out of him. And we got it by putting him in D.
The last question then, because we can't look forward and we can't envision a day, but having been around British hockey since for a while now myself, the Swindon Wildcats for a long time were the best team on paper and never quite got themselves over the line. And I'm loath to mention the 2014 EPL playoff semi-final. How good did it feel when the league title finally came back to Swindon?
Look, it's a bit of a cliche. It was the process that was the most enjoyable bit. So that was, it worked out for your team too, but that was the one year that we made a player change. Sadly released Adam Harding. I remember standing after a game, me and my dad were already talking about bringing Hoogie back. And the one night we had a really bad game and we looked at each other and we said, it's time. And he used to, every year, if we're struggling, he always sends me a picture saying that he's ready. Sadly, we can't have him anymore because of the Brexit word. But look, we won 15 in a row. We went on both years in the when the league was split. After Christmas, we were really good. Actually, the year before, we were actually a better team, but we messed up in the playoffs with some registration stuff. So it was the process of winning the 15 games in a row. I think there was a weekend, like the last couple of weekends, we just knew we were going to do it. I think we lost to Streatham one night when we could have won it, but it was great. It was really good. Winning them in your home rinks, a lot of fun. It's great to see the fans so happy, and just being with the boys afterwards is always a great feeling.
Well, all the best for the rehab. Aaron Nell of the Swindon Wildcats. The start line is not very far away now. All the best for the rest of the summer. We'll see you when it starts.
Thank you.